What the f***?
Beetlejuice Beetlejuice isn't as great as I hoped it would be, but it's not as terrible as I feared it would be either. Tim Burton perfectly recaptures the fun, creepy feel of the original movie, but it's nowhere near as funny or as scary as the original. It might not be fair to use the classic original as a benchmark, but they brought that comparison on themselves when they decided to make a sequel. The cast are fantastic, especially Michael Keaton, who slips effortlessly back into the iconic title role, and the production design beautifully replicates the practical old-school aesthetic of the original. It's just a shame that the script is a bit weak. It juggles too many subplots, bungles some of its characterization, and worst of all, isn't very funny. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is a fun time at the movies. It's worth the price of admission, but it's not a truly great film like its predecessor. This video will contain spoilers for Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. The one thing you could count on in this movie was that the cast would be great. Winona Ryder and Catherine O'Hara are delightful as always, and Jenna Ortega is a worthy addition to the Deetz dynasty. Justin Theroux gives a brilliantly off-the-wall turn as Lydia's spineless boyfriend, Rory, throwing himself into every ridiculous gag. Monica Bellucci and Willem Dafoe are both great, although their characters are underdeveloped. And Danny DeVito has a hilarious cameo as a zombie janitor, who's essentially an even more disgusting version of Frank Reynolds. And of course, the MVP once again is Michael Keaton, who slips back into the role of Beetlejuice so seamlessly you'd think he's been playing the part continuously for the past 36 years. His screen time is pretty limited, just like in the original, but just like in the original, he steals the show every time he pops up on screen. Tim Burton does a fantastic job in the director's chair too, deftly recapturing the feel of the original. I was worried this would be one of those legacy sequels where the classic practical effects of the 80s original are replaced with glossy CG effects. But thankfully, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice maintains the aesthetic of the original beautifully. It has practical sets and costumes and old school special effects like miniatures and puppetry and stop motion animation. So the Beetlejuice sequel has great direction by Burton, great production design and great effects, and great performances from a great cast. Unfortunately, all that great stuff is built on a script that's not so great, written by Wednesday creators Alfred Gough and Miles Miller. For starters, the sequel script just isn't as funny as the original. I know that's subjective, but I didn't find myself laughing anywhere near as much as the first film, and there weren't many chuckles from the rest of the audience in my theatre either. A lot of the dialogue has the structure and cadence of a joke, but it's not actually funny. The cast bring their A-game to every scene, but the gags are rarely worthy of being delivered by a master like Michael Keaton or Catherine O'Hara. Having said that, there are some pretty big laughs in this movie. I love how they got around not showing Jeffrey Jones on screen by having a shark bite his head off, so he's a headless corpse voiced by a Jeffrey Jones sound-alike for the rest of the movie. When Astrid's romance with that kid Jeremy kicked off, I thought Gough and Miller were making the exact same mistake they'd made with Wednesday by wasting Jenna Ortega's time with a bland, uninteresting love interest. The romance was the most boring part of Wednesday, and it's the most boring part of Beetlejuice 2. But at least it wasn't just a generic love story. It was a nice twist to make Jeremy a secret villain who murdered his parents, died and became a ghost, and wants Astrid to trade her life for his. And it was very satisfying to see Jeremy dumped into the fires of damnation by Beetlejuice, topped off by the film's only uncensored F-bomb. But the Jeremy storyline ultimately felt undercooked. The setup, the twist, and the resolution all happen in quick succession, and that's symptomatic of the biggest problem with this script. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice has way too many subplots. Gough and Miller had a lot of fun setting up all these storylines, but they didn't know what to do with them. Beetlejuice's ex-wife coming back for revenge was a really exciting idea, and Monica Bellucci was a great choice for that role, but then she just spent the rest of the film wandering around. Willem Dafoe as a hammy actor turned afterlife PI was a really great concept, but then he just spent the rest of the film hanging around his office. Rather than actually developing these subplots, Gough and Miller just crammed them all into the finale at the church. I loved the use of MacArthur Park in this finale, but it was the kind of lazy final battle that She-Hulk spoofed and subverted. Just take all the disparate, undercooked plot elements and jam them all into the climactic scene. The characterization is a bit out of step with the original film too. Gough and Miller nailed Beetlejuice's signature sleaze, but their version of Lydia Deetz has more in common with Joyce Byers than Lydia Deetz. Part of that is the way Winona Ryder plays the character, but it comes back to how she's written. The miserable misanthrope we met in the first film just isn't the type to settle down and start a family, so her characterization in the sequel felt flawed from the beginning. And from there, she has the exact same story as Joyce in Stranger Things. She's the flustered mother trying to save her kid from a paranormal threat. This movie depicts Lydia as a typical suburban mom who just wants her rebellious teenage daughter to open up more. If it wasn't for the hair, she wouldn't be recognizable as the character from the first film at all. And as for the daughter, Astrid, Guff and Miller couldn't resist turning her into Wednesday 2.0. She doesn't get along with her classmates, she dances like a freak, and she's a deadpan introvert with a heart of gold. Ortega does her best to separate Astrid from Wednesday, playing her as more of a normal kid to contrast against Lydia's weirdness. But that doesn't really work, because Lydia's not much of a weirdo in this one. She's pretty normal too.
You're a figment of my imagination.
Really? Is this a figment of your imagination?
Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is heavier on the gags than the original, but it has far fewer gags that actually land. It has more blood and gore than the original, but fewer genuine frights. And it has a lot more screen time for Lydia, but she doesn't really seem like Lydia. I know I've been very negative about the script, but it's not a bad movie at all. It's a joy to see Keaton back in the role of Beetlejuice and Burton back in the realm of the macabre more than a decade after his last horror film. Just don't expect it to live up to the original.
What are your qualifications?
Well, I attended Juilliard. I'm a graduate of the Harvard Business School. I travel quite extensively. I lived through the Black Plague, and I had a pretty good time during that. I've seen The Exorcist about 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time I see it! Not to mention the fact that you're talking to a dead guy! Now what do you think? You think I'm qualified?
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.